Hi everyone, today we will create a CRUD Rest API in TypeScript using different technologies. We will use Nest.js as a Node.js framework. We will use TypeORM as an ORM, hence the name, an object relational mapper. We will use Postgres as a database and we will run this inside a container. And we will also use Docker to dockerize the Nest.js application, and of course Docker Compose to handle different services. So before we start, I want to show you that my machine is clean. So on my machine, the requirements are, of course, Nest.js installed, and to do that you should run the command npm install -g nestjs-cli. This creates some tools, the CLI tools, command line interface tool, to basically type things like nest new, nest generate controller, and something like that. I have already installed this CLI globally, but I want to show you the command. So npm install -g at nestjs/cli. So this is the command that you should use. And then of course you need node installed, docker installed, and a couple of tools to basically run the containers. So docker, TablePlus to check the database, it's not mandatory, and Postman or any tool you want to test some APIs, okay? And yes, so as you can see, the machine is clean. Here we don't have any container, we don't have any image, it's clean, okay? Okay, so since creating a Nest application might require some time, I want to start typing the command and then I'll show you the very simple architecture of this project. So to create a new Nest.js project, you can type, first of all, you can type nest-version to see if Nest is installed. It is. So the command is nest new. Nest is a framework highly inspired by Angular. Someone called it like Angular for backend. So if you are familiar and you know the structure of Angular, many things are very similar because they got inspired heavily. So Nest, I am in a folder that I usually use for my projects, and I'll call, to create a new project, I type nest new and the name of the project. So since this is live, I call this nest CRUD live, because I made some tests, so I want to be sure that this is the one that I'm doing now. Nest new. Okay, so it asks us which package manager we want to use. I'll go with npm. Maybe it's a bit slower, but at least we don't have to install another tool. I like it. So while we wait, because this can take some seconds or minutes, I want to show you the architecture. So the architecture that we are gonna use today is this one. So as you can see here, we have, this is the Nest.js application. You can see this TypeORM here, which is the object relational mapper. Docker, because we will dockerize this application, writing a Dockerfile. And what will this application do? Nest.js has already a test endpoint, so we don't need to create one, and we'll have five functions for 4 functionalities. Why? Because we'll have 2 functionalities for the read one. So we'll have one for the create a new resource. Usually we use a resource called user. 2 for the read, one to read them all and one to read one. One for the update, we'll use a put request with a body and the user that we want to update, and the delete one. So these are the 4 functionalities done with 5 endpoints. And we will not install Postgres, but we will run Postgres in a container. As you can see here, there is this Docker icon here. And then we will link them using Docker Compose. Docker Compose will create a network that where these 2 containers can communicate. If we have time, I will also show you how. Now, testing tools, Postman for the API, and TablePlus to just check directly inside the DB. Okay? Now, let's see if the meanwhile... Okay, the project has been created. Now, let's go, and thank you so much for subscribing. Now, let's go into the directory. So it was called Nest CRUD Live. Let's step inside the directory, and I want to install some dependency. We will have 4 dependencies to install. So npm install, we have PG, which stands for Postgres for friends. It's basically a Postgres connector to connect to a Postgres database for the Node frameworks. TypeORM, and then a couple of more dependencies related to the Nest.js app, which are Nest.js /TypeORM. This is to create the interface between TypeORM, which is our ORM for many frameworks, and Nest.js specifically, and also Nest.js /config. If you are familiar with Node.js, this is a sort of .env. Maybe it's a bit more powerful, but basically it's a module for Nest.js. Nest.js works with modules to handle environment variables. That's it. Okay, nice. Perfect. Nice. So now we are installing these dependencies, and now we are almost ready, and we can open this project in VS Code, and we will start coding. I hope that today it will be a short one, at least this is my idea. So it's installing. Okay, done. Now let's open this folder with any IDE that we want. I use VS Code. In this case, I open this with code dot, but we can use this. You can open this in any way you want. Let me just resize this so it fits better with the live stream. Okay, let me put this. Okay, nice. Okay, now we have this project, and as you can see, we have many files here, but it's okay. It's okay. Now, before we start creating our resource, our repository, our specific resource, I want to see if this project does work or not. So we can just type npm start, and this will start the Node Nest.js app, hopefully, on port, I think 3000. So, okay. It looks okay. Let me go here. And let's go on localhost 3000. And here is the super simple hello world in Nest.js. So we also already have a test endpoint, which is cool, to be honest. Nice. Now let's start typing some files. We want to populate some files. So to do that, how does Nest.js work? As you can see, Nest.js supports TypeScript natively. We already have TypeScript files here, also these Nest.js icons. Okay, so if we want to create a new resource, we can do this. We can do this manually, but let's use the CLI here at the bottom, and we can type nest.g, which stands for generate module, and the name of the resource that we want to use. For example, users. let's see what happens. So if we type nest.g module users, as you can see here, it did a couple of things. It created a folder called users here, and inside this folder we have a file called users.module.ts. It creates a new module that we'll use to handle the resource. Now, let's create a controller, so nest.g, which stands for generate, controller users, that will create a file named controller inside, hopefully, in the users folder. Yes, it did. It's this one, and also it created a test file that we are not going to use in this demo. Then nest generate, generate service users. We also want to generate a service. The controller will use the service. This is best practice. And now we can create a file. We want to create an entity. I don't want to use the entity as it's the suggest in Nest.js, but I want to use a separate TypeScript file. So I can use touch, or I can just create the file. And in this time I have to specify the folder. So src users user.entity.ts. Let's see. So the file is it's called user.entity.ts. It's this one. And I think we can start from this one. So let's start from the user.entity.ts file. So it's an empty file, and so let's start by importing something, because we want to use this entity connected with TypeORM. So entity, okay. So we have three dependencies: entity, column, and primary generated column. I'll explain what we're doing here. So entity is basically to inform that we want to this not just to be a generic TypeScript class, but something that we want to use to create some tables inside the database. Okay, and we can export directly this class user, and as you can see here, GitHub Copilot is already suggesting what will be the final code of this file. Let me explain. So we have primary generated column, which is an ID, which is a number. It's basically we are defining serialized ID. So this does mean that when we will create a resource, we will specify not username and password, but I think I want to specify name. How does this break? I don't know why. It's fine on YouTube. Let me put the link here because something is happening today. Let's see. I don't know what happens today. Okay. Hey, Julia. Hi. Okay. So name, string, and email. So usually I use this format, name and email. Nice. So the user.entity.ts, it worked. Now let's go on the users.service.ts file. And here we already have a service, but no, we are in the, oh no, here. And but we want to add some stuff. Dependencies, injectable, then we want to import the inject repository, okay, and we want to import the repository from TypeORM, and the user that we just created in user.entity. We don't have to add the extension. Nice. So now we have this class, this injectable class, which is a service, and we want to first of all define a constructor. Okay, why every this constructor. Okay, So let's create this constructor with the user repository by TypeORM. This will help us a lot when we will create, we want to create something in the database, in the Postgres database. We will see this soon. Now, we need to define the services. So let's start with the function, the service, to find all the users. So find all the users. We want to make this, which is an asynchronous function. We get this promise with an array of users. This will be the return type, and we want to return this. Okay. User repository, we have these methods that we can use. Okay. Now, to just find one user, we can go with the find one that will get an ID string as an input, and as an output it will return a promise with an user inside it. Nice. So this is almost correct, but as you can see here we have this small error if we do what GitHub Copilot suggests, because here we have the type, we need a slightly different syntax. Okay. And where ID? Let's say find one where ID. It doesn't like it because let's put a number here. Okay. Yeah, the user, let's define them by number because number is the primary key. And now to create, let's type create. These are like to get all the user, let's leave a couple of comments, get one user. Okay, let me put this below. Okay, now to create a user we need basically a body. Okay, and here we will see something very useful for TypeScript, because here we can create this. We can just return it, I think. Let's say const new user, and then we can return this. Okay, and then we can like this. Okay, I think I forgot to close this parenthesis. Okay, this is to create a user, and then we need to update the user and to delete the user. We are in the service now. So to update the user, we can have this function async update. We need in this case we need an ID and a user, and we will return as a promise the user that we just modified. Let's see. So let's see if this convinces me. Yes, I like it. Here we have this where ID. This is basically a sort of SQL query. Okay, update user. We have, first of all, we do the find one, but I think we can just okay, and then the merge. Let's see. No, let's just go with the default one. So await. We have this repository with the update, and then we return the new user, which is basically this one. Perfect. And to delete the user, this is kind of simple. We can just create this function, and then we can find the user, but I think we can just await here. You can just return await. So we return this user repository dot remove. I think it's delete ID. Okay, await. No, just this. You don't have to return because it depends if we want to return the user or not. I think this is okay. Okay. Not capital. Nice. Okay, so this is the service. Now we need to create and to populate the controller that will use the service. So let's go on the file called users.controller.ts, and first of all, let's update the dependencies. Okay, and here our life will be kinda easy because we are using this framework. I think that it's easy, at least for this part. Now, first of all, let's import, I don't know if you can read here, we can import all the these get, post, body, param, delete, and put that we will use, of course. So this. And then we can import the service because we will use dependency injection to use the service in the controller. And then thank you so much for subscribing, Justin. And then we can import the user. Okay, nice. So this is the user controller class. So let's go in the constructor. Okay, and in the constructor we'll use, as you can see, we inject the user service, this one. Okay, and this is the constructor. Now let's get all the users in the controller. So in the controller we will call the functions in the service. So this is get. This does mean that we will call this controller when we will have in the routes, which are handled semi-automatically in Nest.js, we will handle this function. So we want this. We want the service find all function, which is the one that we just typed. This is for getting all the users. Now, to get one user, we want to go, for example, on /users/4, and we want the user number 4. So we need a sort of ID in the URL, and this it's done very well, and it's very easy to do. And here we can define this function find1, which has this param, and this seems easy, but it's not, because the ID is something that is in the URL. We want to parse the URL and use the ID as a parameter. Okay. And now here I want here to make a test. So I don't want just to return the user, but I want here to do this. So we want to create a user based on the service find1, and then if the user is not there, let's say that we want to go on the users/5 and we don't have the users number 5, we want to throw an error for the user. Okay. Otherwise we'll return the user. Okay. Where is it? Okay. GitHub Copilot didn't help us. Okay. Now, to create a new user, okay, we are in the controller and we want to create a new user. So we need to do a post request here. And here we need a body in JSON format, it's by default, and that's it. And we need to define that we want to have this controller for a post request. And now here, I think that that's it. Okay, so for the post request, we'll just do this. So in case we'll have an error, this will be handled. Let's see. Now, to update the user, we need the user controller is probably one of the hardest one, because we need an ID, and then we need also the body. We need the body of the user we want to update, but we also want to define the ID. For example, let's say that I want to update the user number 2. We need to define we need to do a put request on /users/2, and we need to provide the body with the new user, the updated user. So in this case, okay, let's see. I don't know if you can see here. Let's put it here. So we have this function called update that has a parameter ID. It has a body as the post one, and then this body will be a user of the type user. And here is good because we are using TypeScript classes, which is probably better and safer than just throw them JSON object. Nice. Now in this, I think we can just return this dot user service update user ID. Okay, nice. And this is for the updating the users. When we want to delete the user, we want to make a delete request here, and here we can have this function called delete, and I want to handle the error here. Handle the error if user not found. So it's basically the same as we did here. So we define a user. Then, if the user does not exist, we throw an exception, an error. Otherwise, we will return this. Or we can also return a message like user deleted. In this case, let's go with this one. Okay. And I think that we are done with the controller. Now, 2 more TypeScript files, and then we will jump into the Dockerization. So let's go on the user.module. So we want to use a module as a resource. And to do this, we start with the module that we generated with the CLI, but we need to add the TypeORM, because TypeORM is not the default ORM for Nest.js. We're using TypeORM with Nest.js. You can use TypeORM also with other frameworks. So we import the TypeORM and then the user entity. Okay? And here in the module, we can import the TypeORM module. So there is a module called the TypeORM module for the feature user, which is basically our resource. And then we are done. That's it. So we have controllers provider. This is it was already generated like that. So perfect. Nice. And now the last file is to update the existing app module. So all the Nest.js applications, they have different modules. They have at least one module which is the default one that we had when we did Nest new and the name of the project. Okay. Okay. Nice. Okay. Let me end this poll. So many people used TypeScript, but not many people used the Nest.js. Okay. Nice. So we are in the app module.ts. And here we need to add a couple of imports. So we already have user module. So let me import also TypeORM module, the module of TypeORM. And then we don't need the user here because it's already in the user module, but we need to import the config module, the module that we use to handle the configuration for Nest.js. Now, in the imports, we want to configure the config module, okay, and then user module, and then the TypeORM module. So we can define the configuration of the application directly here. We did this in very different ways for different technologies. Here we are in this module, TypeORM module.forRoot object. So here we can define the type, but we don't want to hard code this. So we will go with the environment variable. And we'll go as db type. Here we add as any because we don't want problems with the types here. You might have problems if you remove this as any. Then, as a host, this is probably one of the most important parts. We want to define the host that we want to connect to. Okay. Nice. And now let's keep writing the environment variables. Thank you so much, Cesar, for subscribing on YouTube. Okay, now, so we need some environment variables. So host, the port, parse int, the username, it will be pg_user, the password, it will be pg_password, the DB will be pg database or DB, pg best type DB. And I also want to add this part, which is entities. So I want to import all the files that are called entities. So we'll have this for TypeORM. This is important. We can also be more specific here and specify the files one by one. Since this is maybe a base project that you might use, I want to be, I want then to, I don't know, maybe you want to add another resource and this will still work. Now, a very important line is this one, synchronize true, because I am a fan of at least for these tutorials, of a project that creates the Postgres table automatically. That I don't have to create the table automatically with either a SQL command or jumping inside, because I don't want to just run the application and then just working automatically. Not only this, but maybe in the future I want to update my entity, I want to update my model, and I don't want to remember every time if, I don't know, I forgot to add a column in the DB. So this synchronize.true will do some magic later. And I think that we are done. We are done, of course, with the app, not with the old Docker stuff. We still have to create some Docker stuff. Okay, so now let's go on the Docker part. In this case, we want to create 3 files, and I'll create them using the command line. Let's see if I make some typo. Touch Dockerfile, which is, unsurprisingly, the file to create a Docker image. Then the file called dockerignore. We will start from this one. And then another file called docker-compose.yml. So we are creating 3 files here. Let's see if I type this command, if we'll have these 3 files here. Okay, dockerignore, dockerfile, Docker compose. Perfect. So I want to start from the dockerignore. The reason is why I created a dockerignore in this project, even if it's simple, is that when I'll copy some stuff in the Docker image file system, I don't want these node modules. I don't want the dist. If you're familiar with gitignore, it's a very similar concept. We want these folders and some files only locally. So I want to add dist node modules. This can be done in different ways. Let's just go with the simple stuff here and git. Okay, just these 3. I just wanted to don't add these 3 folders. Of course, you feel free to add. Maybe you don't want the README, or we don't want either the Docker file. Some people, they don't want the Docker file inside the Docker image. It depends. Now, one of my favorite parts. Let's go on the Docker file. So a Docker file is a file to create a Docker image. A Docker image is based on a Docker file. So Node 16. Here we can use different versions of Node.js. We can use Slim, we can use Alpine. For these tutorials, sometimes I prefer the version not Alpine for a simple reason, that if I want to use Bash or I want to do some stuff with this node container, I have them already inside the container, okay? But probably it would be a good idea to also use the node Slim version or Alpine version. We're also not using here, we are using the root user. This is not a production ready Docker file, but it's something to get this project done as soon as possible. So workdir is the folder inside the Docker image. And now we can install the dependencies. We do this copying this package star.json./ This cryptic command, basically it does this. it copies the package.json file and the package-lock.json if this does exist. So it's a little regex trick putting this star. And here it means put these two files inside the user source app folder inside the Docker image file system. And now we run and install the dependencies, and then we copy all the rest except what will be defined in the dockerignore. So if we say copy ... it means copy everything which is in this folder inside the Docker image file system. But since we have a .dockerignore file here, we will not copy this file, this folder, and the .git, which is not visible here, but I promise you that it's there. So, and now let's run the build inside the Docker image. You can do this in different ways, but I like this one in this case. We want to inform that we want to use the port 3000, and then we can define the Docker command. The Docker command is the default command that we run that we want to execute when we do Docker run. Does this mean that we can't execute something else? No, but if we just type Docker run, it will execute this one. In this case, it's not npm start, but I want to do npm run start and production. Okay, in production mode, let's say semi-production mode. Okay, so this is the Docker file. Let's see if it stays. Okay, it stays in a single screen. Okay, nice. And now also one of other parts that I really like is the Docker Compose file. So to create a Docker Compose is different things. Docker Compose is a set of commands from the CLI called Docker Compose. Then there is also something called docker-compose.yml. This is a file. This is called Docker Compose file. So we will create a Docker Compose file, and then we will use the Docker Compose CLI. Okay? So version 3.9. GitHub Copilot never helps me here. Okay, now let's define the services. Okay, and we will have unsurprisingly two services, but let's type them together. So we want a service called Nest App. This will be the Nest application, and here I want to define a container name. The name of the container will be Nest App. It doesn't have to be the same as the service. Service is basically a container, but it's a good practice. Now, as an image, I want not to be just Nest App, but I want to be Francesco XX /Nest App 1.0.0. So this is the image that I am creating. Now let's build the build path. Basically, it's dot. It means here I want to build in the same folder where the Docker Compose file is defined. This is a standard, but it's not mandatory, of course. And the port, we want to use 3000. Be sure that this doesn't collide with an Express app or other stuff. And then we need to define the environment variable. Do you remember that in the app.module.ts we define some environment variable? It's time, no, this is wrong. It's time to define them. So db_type is Postgres. This is for to define the type of the DB. Now the PG host. I like to call this not DB but PG host because let's say in the future I want to use a different database. I want PG to stand for Postgres. So the PG host, but it's not Postgres, is DB because this will be the name of the container we want to connect to. Okay, PG user. PG user Postgres, PG password Postgres, PG DB we said, I think. Postgres. Postgres creates automatically a database called Postgres. So let's go with that. And I think we're done. 6. Yes, and now we want to define depends on DB. Okay, nice. Now we need to define the other service. We already did this sometimes. So here it's very important that as a container name we type DB. This DB has to match this PG host, otherwise it's not gonna work. Okay. Now as an image, I want a specific version of Postgres, not just Postgres, but a specific version of Postgres. In this case, it will be Postgres 12. Maybe in the future I will try to update, but for now I want this to be Postgres 12. Now, as ports, 542 is the standard, and here I have to use the Postgres default environment variable. I can't change here user, password, and DB. I have to, Postgres underscore user, Postgres underscore password, Postgres underscore DB. This has to match this user, password, and DB. These three. I define the PG user, PG password, PG DB. These are keys that I can change. I have to use them. Then, for persistency, I have to create this one, volumes. I don't know why GitHub Copilot always recommends an unnamed volume, anonymous volume. We want a volume that has this name. And here I can define, I think is this one, is exactly, is the volumes. As the volumes, we want the PG data. Okay. If you wonder why I'm doing these parentheses here, nobody asked this, is that I want this volume to be called PG data, not the structure of this folder PG data. No, I want this to be called PG data on my machine, and also maybe hopefully on the production server. Okay, we are done with the typing. Now we need to do just the test. Let's see. So first of all, docker compose up -d stands for detached DB. So we want to run the Postgres container. And this here usually takes a while. So in the meanwhile, let's go on TablePlus. Let's see if I'm faster, but probably not. So on TablePlus, let's create a new connection. The host is localhost 5432 Postgres. Okay. So let's see if this does work. Here. Okay, connection is okay. So we are connected. Here we are using localhost because we are on this machine. TablePlus is not running in a container. So localhost is okay. And we pipe connect. We are in an empty DB. Check it out. Here we don't have the user table yet, but we'll have it soon, hopefully, because now we are on the hardest part. So we need to build the image and run the image and fix if I did some typos or some logical error. So I want to say something. Not in many tutorials you will see the docker compose build command. We can also type docker compose build and nest up, but I like docker compose build because this does mean that we are building the image that is defined here. If you do docker compose up and it doesn't have the image, it builds it. But I want to go through this step because sometimes we might also have some issues in the docker compose build. So I don't want to do docker compose up and having a bunch of errors and then try to understand what's going on. So let's see. We are building the image now, and then we will run the image, and then we will be done. Noob dev. Hey, King Cobra. Are you talking about me? Okay. Okay. So we are building the image, and now we will run it. This it's taking a while because I'm doing npm run build. Now let's do docker compose up. So docker compose up. Let's see if this does work. Bam. Docker compose up. Let's see. Good sign, very good sign. So usually when I see this good sign, the first thing that I do is I check if the containers are up and running, yes, and if the ports here. So usually if I see this and the ports, it's a very good sign. Now you know, HTML CSS just I'll reply at the end. And okay, so we have the application up and running. Now, first of all, let me remove this, otherwise it might be confusing. Now, to test this application, we can do this in different ways. Let's go with the here. So if we, first of all, let's try with localhost, because you remember that we went on localhost when we did the npm start, okay? Let's see. It works. So it still works. Now let's try to go on /users. Nice. And we see here an empty array of users. These two little brackets, they are a very good sign that things are working. Now, we can also get these users from the Postman or any tool we want. So let's go with this. As you can see, we have these empty users. Now we can create the users, but before I create the users, let's do something. Let's go on TablePlus again, and I want to refresh. Let's see. Can you? I don't know if you can see here, but here we already have this table, the table of users. This has not been triggered by this get request. I'll tell you where and how it got triggered. It got triggered here in the user app module. Do you remember we have this synchronized through? This will synchronize with the models defined in the application. And now we just have to do the final test and we are done. And I want to also show you something about the Docker network at the end of the live stream. So to create a new resource, we can go on the, I think it's users, not users, and we need a body. Now, to be precise here, we need, if we want to be sure, as a header, we need to have a content type application JSON here. I already have this in the Postman tool, okay? So name, it can be AAA, and email AAA@mail. Okay, there is no check with the mail validation. There is no validation here. So let's create this. Okay, as you can see, we have the user AAA, but we also have the ID. Now, if I try to create a user called BBB with BBB mail using the same URL, the same command, we have this and this too. As you can see here, it's auto-incremented by the system. I don't define which is my ID when I sign up, I don't know, for a marathon. Okay. Here, also on the university, I can define my own ID. The ID is given by the system. So CCC, okay. So now we hopefully created the 3 different resources. So let's try again to do this get. Usually it's this, so it's easier. And as you can see, now we have these three users. Let's try also here. If we refresh, okay. And we have these 3 users, AAA, BBB, and CCC. We have the 3 users. You can also check on TablePlus. Okay, as you can, I don't know if you can see, but here there are the 3 users, so we did the insert inside the DB. Now we just need 2 more users, and then I want to show you something else. I also have to show you how I can get a single user. So here, by doing this, I can get a single user. Then if I want to modify a user, let's say that I want to modify the user number 2, okay? I don't need to add the ID. I need to do a put request on the URL with the ID of the user here, and I want to do this like new, and this is new user. So I want to replace BBB with the new user. Let's do this put request, and we get it. Let's see now if we get the user. We get the updated user. I want to show you like this. You see the 1 and 3 are okay, and the 2 it has different values, and we can delete the user. Here, let's say that I want to delete the user number 3, for example. Let's do a delete request. It says okay. Let's try to get all the users, and yes, done.